The Sydney Jewish Museum has issued a national call out for anyone with World War II artefacts to get in touch.
It's to mark the 25th anniversary of the Holocaust, reflecting on the pioneering spirit of survivors. Reporter Mark Reddy has more.
More stories of survival have emerged from the Holocaust after the Sydney Jewish Museum issued a national call-out as part of its 25th anniversary. Joining me now is Head Curator Rosalind Sugarman and Holocaust survivor George Gronowski. Ros, tell us, why did you issue this national call-out?
Very often people have things that they think might not be very significant or of interest to others, but we regard anything that was retained from this period as evidence, as material evidence, and we wish to retain it and preserve it for posterity. And we use it for exhibitions, we use it for research, and we use it for education purposes.
So can you tell us a bit about some of the items that have been donated and the stories behind them?
What is so significant for us about the headscarf is that it is a half headscarf, and the survivor who obtained it had exchanged it for a piece of bread. And she wore this headscarf. It gave her a sense of dignity. It brought back her sense of humanity. I mean, if you consider she'd arrived in the camp and she would have had her hair shaved. And she was a young girl, she was a teenager. And just wearing the scarf, she talks about how it gave her a sense of dignity. So we very often use survivor testimony to explain to us the significance of these very humble objects.
George, you survived the Holocaust. What have you donated to the museum, and why did you decide to do it so many years later?
I was 12 when the war broke out. By the time I was 13, I was already in a labor camp. And in my journey during the Nazi occupation of Poland, my final journey was to Buchenwald concentration camp, where we were stripped naked and given concentration camp uniforms. We didn't have names, we were just a number or a color code. And I was on a death march from Buchenwald to another concentration camp, and I was liberated by the Soviet army. All our concentration camp uniforms, because we were on a death march, were overrun with dirt and with lice, and they were piled up and burned. And I decided to keep my uniform with my number, which is 116530.
Why did you decide to keep your uniform when it caused so much pain?
To remind myself of where I was and to remind myself where my family perished. But I was stirred by denials that things like that did happen. So I thought, if I don't raise my voice, who is going to do that? To donate and then to speak about it is to give the young people the idea of the horror of war, and to remind them, because it's a new generation that is growing up, that we have to look up to run the country, to fight for democracy, for freedom of speech, and not look away if something is not right.
Thank you both for joining us. So there you go, stories like George's being kept alive here at the Sydney Jewish Museum as part of its new exhibition.